Hey y'all, Sakaven here. Thanks for choosing to watch our gameplay video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for further content. Enjoy the show. Welcome everyone to the court's first gameplay Conquest video. We'll go over the decks and hands now. In the top left corner we've got Chazzer going first with his Vadrik Gifts deck, commanded by Vadrik Astral Archmage. The goal is to make Vadrik big and reduce the cost of spells to storm off and win the game. It has one card combos involving Gifts Ungiven and pump spells to reduce the cost of spells, and then it can threaten commander damage, which is only 12 in Conquest, so it's an effective strategy. He's starting off with an opening hand of Fervent Mastery, Increasing Vengeance, Runechanter's Pike, Wheel of Misfortune, Spellburst, an Island, and a Fiery Islet. What's interesting about that hand, Prince?
Well, I see there's a lovely, lovely little piece of cardboard there called Runechanter's Pike. Runechanter's Pike is good in a lot of spell slinging heavy commander decks because once you equip it, its effect is your creature gets plus X plus 0 for every instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. Now, normally this allows you to push through damage, but in Vadrik specifically, this effect has two different benefits. And the second one is actually the more important one because all of your spells get discounted for Vadrik's power. So you don't have to just sit there waiting for day and night to pass by. You can just equip a gigantic Runechanter Spike, and all of a sudden, your spells all cost 1 or 2 mana.
Yeah, great analysis of that. Runechanter's Spike is one of the biggest cards in this deck. I can see being important to have Fervent Mastery in that hand. That's kind of the glue, the reach that this hand has. And then looks like a Spell Burst to interact favorably after casting Vadrik. So yeah, pretty standard hand there.
Yeah, I'm seeing Fervent Mastery and Increasing Vengeance as good cards once you start comboing, but I think the two most important after Runechanter's Pike here are Spell Burst, so that you can stay alive and counter unfriendly spells, and then Wheel of Misfortune, which is more likely than not going to wheel away the Increasing Vengeance and Fervent Mastery before we get to see them in action, which could put into jeopardy everyone's hand, depending on how fast that goes off.
Yeah, Wheel of Misfortune, very interesting card. Usually ends up being a Wheel of Fortune with a little bit of extra steps. All right, moving on. Prince, will you take Beard Umbra, the second player?
Of course, our good friend Beard showed up with the weirdest deck I've ever seen. It's in Grixis colors. It's playing a commander that I can't even pronounce. It's amazing. All right, so Beard Umbra's deck is called Dihada Uncaged, named after its commander Geyadrone Dihada. How'd I do?
Nice.
This is a polymorph deck, and it's a really interesting one. It's one of those decks that doesn't have any creatures except gigantic payoff creatures. We're talking Emrakul, we're talking probably other things that are good.
Blightsteel
Uh,
Colossus, I think, is the second one.
Blight Blightsteel was in there. A consecrated sphinx? Question mark.
Maybe.
Really big hitting creatures, and since you don't have any small creatures, you can't accidentally polymorph into them. So the question should be, how do you get the small creatures to polymorph into the big ones? And this deck chooses to solve that problem in the coolest way possible by just stealing your opponent's stuff and polymorphing that. And Geyadrone Diada is the well, while it's not the primary way to steal creatures, I would say, it's still a way to do that in the command zone, and it provides a great, great color combination for your deck.
Yeah.
If we take a look at Beard Umbra's hands here, we'll see. Well, let me list it. He's got a Spell Pierce. He's got a Cyclonic Rift. He's got a Fabled Passage, a Prismatic Vista, Maze of Ith, Mishra's Factory, and Synthetic Destiny. There's a few things about this hand that stand out to me. What about you, Sakaven?
The first thing I see is Spell Pierce. That's a good card to keep when you're going in your opening hand because it allows you to interact on turns 1 and 2 without sacrificing any more than 1 mana. And I see Synthetic Destiny, one of the polymorph effects in the deck, so keeping a hand with a win condition is a good idea. This hand's primary goal will be getting enough mana to cast Geyadrone and steal a creature and go off. Seems like pretty balanced hand to me. A couple, 4 lands, one of which is Mazavith. Good protection card, but doesn't make mana. And then it's got 2 interaction spells and 1 win con.
Yeah, I agree. And I get the feeling that we're not going to see Synthetic Destiny before that Wheel of Misfortune in Chazar's hand goes off.
That's true.
Definitely between the Maze of Ith, Spell Pierce, and Cyclonic Rift, Beard Umbra's hand provides a lot of ways not to not get killed. What it doesn't provide is a lot of consistent color fixing. He's got 2 colorless lands here, a Fabled Passage and a Prismatic Vista, meaning he's got to make a really early decision about what basic to grab with both of those lands, and one of them is either going to be slow for one of 2 reasons. You're either going to delay the Fabled Passage as the play, or you're going to play it early to not get punished by the come in tap clause, and then kind of be restricted to what basic you chose to grab really early on.
Yeah, one of them definitely is going to be an island, but we'll see. The next, he's got to make a choice on red or blue. Red or black for the second one. So yeah, looking like pretty interesting stuff so far. And now you're in the bottom right corner.
That's right.
Prince brought his Conquest Muldrotha deck, with Muldrotha the Gravetide, of course, as the commander. It's a kind of a Sultai good stuff mid-range deck. It disrupts with cheap stacks bodies, and it ramps into several finishers, including Primeval Titan, Sylvan Primordial, and then you have the Leveler and Thassa's Oracle combo in there as well. His opening hand is Nurturing Peatland, Waterlogged Grove, Mana Confluence, Garruk Wildspeaker, Wildgrowth, Diabolic Intent, and Whispering Madness. You also play Wheels and Wheel Payoffs. There is a lot more of those legal in Conquest than there are in EDH. You have access to, in this game, you have access to both Hullbreacher and Leovold on top of
the Notion Thief.
Notion Thief.
EDH, yes, yep. Correct.
So what do you think about that hand?
Well, based on the way it's listed, I don't remember thinking this when I drew it, but definitely between Peatland, Waterlogged Grove, and Mana Confluence, these lands are ganging up on me and beating on my life points there.
Oh, yeah.
So I ideally want to close things out quickly. I'm not under too much pressure. I mean, there's a Storm Spellslinger deck, a green-white combo deck, and a Grixis kind of also combo deck, so luckily I'm not getting beat down by my opponents, probably, but that is something that could be mentioned. I do absolutely love that I have both Garruk Wildspeaker and Wildgrowth in this hand, and it's probably the strongest pair of cards in this hand, honestly.
Yeah, that is a very nice combo. I have used that many times in my green decks, just being able to get 3 mana off of that Garruk rather than the normal 2.
Absolutely. That's going to lead most likely to a fast Muldrotha here. Now, fast Muldrotha is not the primary game plan of this deck. In fact, usually it's the plan C or D. But given the decks that are currently here, I am probably going to want to throw down a stacks piece and then just go to town beating people with Muldrotha. Especially since I just don't have any other things to do in this hand. Diabolic Intent doesn't have something to sacrifice until Garruk makes a 3/3. Whispering Madness is good, but I have nothing to imprint it onto at the moment, and I don't have anything that can break the... what's the word? Equality?
Parity, I think, is the word people use.
Right, I'd ideally have a draw into a Leovold here and then be super happy turn 2 Leovold, turn 3 Whispering Madness, but of course that's just one card, so we'll see what our hero stumbles onto once the game begins.
For sure, and I'm in the bottom left corner. Want to go over what I brought to the table?
Of course. Our buddy Sakaven brought his green-white The Nuts deck. His commander is Selvala, Explorer Returned, and it is the champion of the Nuts. Selvala, when it activates, it parlays, everyone reveals the top card of their library and draws it. But for every non-land card, this dude makes a green mana and gains a life. So, uh, technically, if you have a way to continue to untap Selvala, this can not only make a ton of life, and a ton of mana, but it can also deck people out, which is kind of
Exactly.
crazy. Uh, Super cool, super fitting way to kill greedy Magic players that love drawing their cards. Absolutely love it. Now, Sakaven, you drew a first seven that sucked. You drew a second seven that sucked. You drew a six that also sucked, and you went down to five, and it kind of didn't suck. We
Yeah.
got here a tooth and nail, an emerald charm. It's a one mana twiddle. A bloom tender, and then forest and command tower. It's pretty good, is it not?
Yeah, if I had to pick a 5 card hand, I might pick that one.
This is like okay, you got your two lands, you got your Bloom Tender on turn two Bloom Tender, great ramp. Turn three Selvala turns Bloom Tender into a better card, and then you already have the Emerald Charm to twiddle Selvala. If you get lucky, that's a turn four Tooth and Nail.
Exactly. Yep. That's the plan I
Jesus,
had when I saw that hand. And so I thought, well, this is good as a 5 card hand. I don't exactly have protection, but that's okay.
what I tell you, folks, this deck is the nuts.
Alrighty. So you ready to get into the gameplay for game one?
I am so ready.
Alrighty. Here we go, folks. Chazzer's going to draw a card and start us off.
That was an epic sound effect for Chaucer drawing a card.
Yep. Sometimes the background noise hits just right. Starts with that fiery eyelet and plays a Jamulet. I like to call it Jamulet. Um, it's a
It's
zero
just
mana artifact. You can put a charge counter on it when you pay a color of mana, and the charge counter remembers the color of mana, and it can only have one on it, and then you can tap it to remove it later. It's like a really slow mana rock, but it doesn't. It only costs one if you play it really quickly, so it's in a lot of decks in this format. Beard's
yeah,
got
in blue red you take what you can get, and that was an awesome top deck from Chaucer, by the way. The
yeah,
Jewel
it,
Tag.
it was. I'm gonna pause right here because I want to talk about Beard's first land drop here. He chose to play the Fabled Passage first.
Right.
If you remember in his hand, he had his 1 mana spell was Spell Pierce. And he saw Chazzer play a Mana Rock on turn one, which means there is the possibility of larger spells coming on turn two.
For sure.
And Beard, by playing Fabled Passage, he won't let himself use Spell Pierce this turn. He's conceding, and he's conceding that fact because he wants his mana to be as smooth as possible on turns two through four.
Yeah.
So he's prioritizing the mana, the smoothness of the mana here. Because if he were to lead with the Prismatic Vista into Island, then that locks him into having an island and two colorless lands, only one of which makes mana that are untapped before turn four, which is not a great place to be. So
Now,
it's a hard
it is a
decision.
play for sure. Yeah, it's a play that I could see myself making as well because, well, that Fabled Passage is going to be in your hand regardless. Do you want to basically you have this Prismatic Vista and Fabled Passage, and Fabled Passage is the slower version. And I guess the thought process behind a decision like this is, well, am I more likely to die within the first two turns or in the later turns? Since it's usually safer in the first few turns from dying. This isn't like C80H or anything. So you can maybe afford to bring in a land tapped earlier on rather than later on. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, we'll,
We'll come
we'll
back to it if
continue.
it becomes relevant for sure. And
Yep.
here's your boy playing his wild growth. That
Yep.
ramp.
That
Ramp
ramp.
is important, kids. Eat your fruits and vegetables.
Hmm. I draw. I play my Prismatic Vista, which I top decked a Prismatic Vista, so that's my third land, so I'm already set to go on that game plan, and I just pass a turn.
What was the thought process behind playing the land that makes you choose what to get first rather than something like Command Tower, which will always have your two colors? Because the way I'm thinking is if Prismatic Vista is your third land instead of your first, then you have the luxury of knowing much better whether you need more white or more green.
The reason is because this deck rarely needs more than one white mana and it never needs it before turn 3. So I already have one land in my hand that produces white, and Bloom Tender will produce white as well. So playing this first is my I'm doing the marginal play of like, oh, a little bit of deck thinning, and it gets it gets more cards out there quicker. Um,
Yeah, that makes
so
sense.
so that's why I made that play, is because the mana, um, having 2 white mana is not going to be necessary off of just my lands.
Yep.
And Chazzer starts with his Runechanter's Pike. Now,
There it is.
this is when the Spell Pierce would have been relevant. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
because this is it would be a huge target to Spell Pierce. Such a powerful card in Chazzer's deck, and now he's landed it on turn 2 to no answer. And now I know, even though Beard's going to have smoother mana here on turns 2 and 3, he doesn't have anything except the Cyclonic Rift to back it up with. Well,
Yeah, that's true.
that'll become relevant later. Beard's in an interesting position where he's the control player at this board, so he's going to be trying to choose what to answer and what not to answer. Here, I should have cracked this Prismatic Vista in your upkeep, because
Yeah.
I should have been playing around Opposition Agent. Luckily, you didn't have it, but
Would have been.
I'll remember that. I should be cracking that in your upkeep, not in your end step. But I survived that. Um, so
Crisis averted. Hey, you grabbed a planes.
I did grab a planes, and I guess I faked myself out there. I probably was thinking, well, I might need this. I had 2 green lands in my hand, so I think the biggest thing to take away from that is that it really didn't matter which basic I got there.
I guess so. When you only have 2 colors, it matters a lot less.
Yeah, for my sequencing purposes especially. Got a turn 3 Vadrik from Chazzer with the Runechanter's Pike in play. This is setting up for big things in the following turns.
Yeah, seems like a decent move. Now,
Here,
we're not immediately threatened by this Vadrik. We have at least one more turn because his graveyard's still empty. He still needs to equip that Runechanter's Pike.
yeah, unless
But
he
things
has
are
the
looking
nuts, we're not under any danger.
right.
Beard has played his 3rd land without taking action. There's not really anything to Cyclonic Rift right now. And this is when you go for your Garrick.
Yep, there's that boy.
Now
Little
this,
do I know there's a lurking Spell Pierce that Beard Umbra can choose to use against this Garrick.
yep, Spell Pierce does answer Garrick. It's an interesting choice to look at that. I see that as a big threat too, coming from you.
Yeah,
And
especially so if I'm Beard and I don't have any creatures, I don't have an answer to this Garruk once it's in play. And if I have an answer in my hand, I can see the appeal of countering it there.
yeah, and especially since Spell Pierce gets worse as the game goes along, so he saw an
Yeah.
opportunity and took it.
Yeah, I was an unfortunate casualty to the circumstance there.
Here I play my
Must-
Selvala, and I believe I just passed the turn. No, I don't. I drew a Llanowar Elves, so I have even more ramp.
Oh, perfect. So at this point, we know that Runechanter's Pike is probably the best card in play right now, but what we probably are not aware of is just how threatening you are with that Tooth and Nail in hand and so much access to so much mana.
For sure, yeah. The Tooth and Nail is a big threat, but it's a secret. I don't have to show it. I have enough mana to cast it just on the board if I hit good off of Selvala, and with my Emerald Charm, it's virtually guaranteed. Um, Beard made the choice to get a Mountain as his second basic. Um, Blocks him out of a couple things, but it gives him the opportunity to play more multicolor spells. So that was probably the only choice he can make with his current hand.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what he's drawn into at this point. For all we know, he might have an Abrade.
Yep. Interestingly, he did that on my end step and didn't wait till Chaz's end step, because if he had waited, he would have had the option during Chaz's turn to use the Cyclonic Rift. That would have locked him into a second island, of course, but he would have kept that opportunity open.
Yeah,
But
that's fair.
Chazza goes and equips to this Vadrik, and casts a Frantic Search. One of the best cards in that deck. He just cast it for 1 mana.
Yeah, very good card.
Uh, the day and night cycle switches a lot more than you'd think. He already has 2 counters on it. Draws 2, discards a Preordain, and an Increasing Vengeance. He did discard the Increasing Vengeance, but
All
to a
right.
Frantic Search. He's had some really good draws since the first turn.
Yeah, fire.
Now Vadrik has a 6 power, so this could get nasty really fast. He goes for the Fervent Mastery. Now this has a little bit of a random element. We'll see how that affects things here, but it's a triple gamble essentially. You get 3 cards, and then you have to discard 3 at random. We'll see what he discards. Looks like the first discard is that Wheel of Misfortune. The second is Gifts Ungiven. Now that's big. He definitely searched for that because that's a 1-card combo in his deck. And Jeska's Will, another huge hit. So his 3 discards were massively detracting from his plan, so he had to pass a turn.
Now, it's likely that the third card that he searched for was Past in Flames. So we're definitely not out of the woods as far as Chazer's ability to kill us is concerned.
That's true. He's got a single island left, so he could have got Past in Flames, but he's holding on to it.
Beard plays his colorless land and passes. That's a Maze of Ith, I believe.
Yeah,
and here we see a Manglehorn that Prince drew.
Yep, that deals with the Root Chanter's Pike. But here
unless it's getting spell bursted?
It is getting spell bursted. It's a expensive buyback counter spell, but it hits anything with CMC X, and luckily because of Vadrik, he can choose any number he likes for X under the amount of power that Vadrik has. So
good.
Just countered the Manglehorn for 1 mana. Now, if you'll notice here, Beard is the only one who has untapped mana sources going into my turn. So I'm feeling pretty confident with my Tooth and Nail. I bolt in the Emiria and I go for a parlay.
If this parlay is good, it could mean danger.
That's a Decree of Pain, by the way. That
Decree of Pain, snow-covered forest, a mountain, and a land from you?
Yep, it was only one.
That was an awful parlay.
It was awful, but that's why I play Emerald Charm. That's why I play Twiddles. It's because, yes, I know there's a lot of RNG that goes with Selvala, but you can abate it by... You can assume you'll get at least 1 mana. It's over 98% to get at least 1 with Selvala. Now, the second card I see is Benefactor's Drought. That seals it. That's another Twiddle. And that one untaps all my creatures. And it looks like I hit 3 off of this. And now I'm thinking, nobody drew a counterspell there. I've got 9 mana. Yeah.
So the chance that he has another one is super low now.
Yeah. And I've got 9 mana here, so I'm just going to entwine this Tooth and Nail.
Yikes.
Goes around the table.
So now there's a chance that this kills us, but we know that Beard has a Cyclonic Rift in hand.
We do. It's a matter of how he uses it. He pauses me there, but he doesn't do anything yet. I go get a meal and Village Bellringer. Now, I must admit, this was not the correct choice for the situation in hindsight. I have a better pair I could get. So how these interact is that Village Bellringer, it comes in, untaps all creatures I control, and then I can use a meal for 3 mana to blink Village Bellringer and get that effect again. So effectively I can pay 3 to untap all creatures I control. And because my creatures tap for more than 3 mana, this would allow me to deck people out with Selvala. So that's the secondary combo of my deck, though. What's the primary game plan that I should have gotten, Prince?
Is this a quiz? Everyone who's played against Sakaven knows about his homegirl Ashaya. Turns everything into trees, and you know how we all love trees on this channel. Ashaya and Quirion Ranger create this awesome dual combo where Quirion Ranger gets turned into a land by Ashaya, and his ability is to return a forest, which he now is, or she, and then untap something. So Quirion Ranger is not supposed to be a forest, but because it is, this is infinite. You can return that Quirion Ranger, which costs 1, by the way, and untap something like, I don't know, Selvala. Tap Selvala, make like 3 green, use 1 of it to cast Quirion Ranger, and now that it's a new entity, it's once per turn a restriction on its ability doesn't apply because it's a new card. So it can just return itself again, untap a creature, and boom, infinite mana.
Yep, and because so there's the one reason I got Village Bellringer and Emil here is because I was thinking Beard's got red and blue interaction. I was thinking about red and I was like, okay, they both have 4 toughness, right? They're pretty safe from bolts and things. But I wasn't considering the fact that that doesn't actually matter because Quirion Ranger's ability, the activation cost moves it to your hand. There's no opportunity where a person can bolt a Quirion Ranger. And Ashaya would be an 8/8 on that board. So I should have just gotten those two. And we'll see where this goes now that he has a Cyclonic Rift. The reason that Ashaya and Quirion Ranger would have been immune to Cyclonic Rift is because Cyclonic Rift says the words non-land permanent. And because Ashaya makes all the creatures into lands, it can't target them. But now I've opened myself up. And he responds to the Village Bellringer trigger with Cyclonic Rift targeting Emil. It's a fair choice, but he probably hasn't seen this combo often enough to know how quickly I can recover from something like that. If he had targeted Selvala, I would have been done because I can't just give Selvala haste. But now I untap all my creatures and I just tap them all, plus the white land, the leftover white land, to just make some mana here, and then I'll be parlaying again. Hit Eladamri's Call there. What has everyone else got? Land.
Prince is lagging.
Finnhorn Elves, so that's 2 green. Pretty perfect. Now, because of the Benefactor's Drought in my hand, I'm safe to just use 4 of my 6 mana and cast Emil.
Yeah, Beard Umbra's mana is spent, so... Yeah, so is Chaucer's.
Yep, so we're off to the races. Benefactor's Drought, awesome card. Only printed once, untaps all creatures, and then if they block, you draw cards, and you draw a card every time you play it.
Great card in this deck.
So I'm demonstrating my
$1 million question. What are the chances that you whiff from this point?
I did the hypogeometric calculation, and turns out if a deck has an average of 25 cards in it out of 80, I have a 72% chance to get 3 mana, and I have a 97.8% chance, I believe, to get 2 mana. And unfortunately for everyone else, the chances are 0 in this scenario that I whiff, because I don't actually need Selvala to make mana. Because
that's true.
Bloom Tender plus Llanowar Elves makes 3. That's enough to pay for a meal. Selvala is just gravy at this point.
Right, so Selvala is just a draw engine. It's not part of the actual mana engine.
Yep, and the way this fails is if someone draws into interaction, they can play on the first 2 draws before I can stack 2 extra Emil activations. But at this point, it's done. I've already stacked up too much mana.
So how do you win from this point?
I just keep activating Selvala until everyone's deck is in their hands. The way I get around decking out myself is I just cast Green Sun Zenith. Since I have mana, it's my turn, and it goes back in my library. That'll reset the counter for 1. I can also do it with Endurance. Those are the 2 options I have to increase my reach here.
Fascinating. So hypothetically, someone could have answers to both Endurance and Green Sun Zenith.
Hypothetically, except not anymore, because I use a Quarter Calling to grab Grand Abolisher and end it, because Grand Abolisher will answer anything that someone could have drawn. So that was game 1. What do you think?
What a game. I loved it. Well, now everyone had a little bit of a different role. You and Chaucer were both very powerful, very imposing, looked like the threats to beat. Beard Umbra, unfortunately, was the only one, it seemed, who was trying to interact. where myself, I was trying to ramp out, but got stopped once. They tried to interact and got stopped. It's kind of interesting the way things ended up because if Beard Umbra had targeted the correct creature there with Cyclonic Rift, you probably didn't win, and then Chazar most likely untapped and won.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
At the same time, if you had grabbed a Cheyenne Quirion Ranger, Beard Umbra Cyclonic Rift just doesn't work, and you still win.
Yep.
So, overall, I'd say that was a pretty fair end to the game, and a pretty great showing from that Nuts Selvala deck.
Yeah, it's very fun to play. Now going into game two, same players. Turn order is a little bit different now. Um, why don't you start us off with Chaz's opening hand? He gets to go first again. He goes first a lot.
Oh yeah. This time I'm going last just to nerf myself so you guys have a chance.
Uh huh.
Anyway, Chaucer. Y'all know his deck. We saw it do some things last game. They were pretty scary. This time he opens up with a Rolling Earthquake. We'll get into that. Um, Haze of Rage. Haze of Rage is a storm spell.
No, it has buyback.
Buyback is so. For anyone who doesn't know this interaction, Vadrik, if he has like 10 power, he reduces your colored costs by 10, which
Colorless costs.
usually you're not going to play cards that cost like one red, one blue, and then 10 colorless. But if it has an additional cost like buyback, well, you can pay all three of those colorless in the buyback cost and then just repeatedly send something back to your hand. It's absolutely lovely, that interaction with Vadrik. And
Yep.
it's so unique even among his storm counterparts, so I like that a lot.
Yep.
Uh,
Buyback is broken with Vadrik.
yeah, after Rolling Earthquake and Haze of Rage, we got Fact or Fiction. Very good card. 4 mana instant, just good on its own, but if Vadrik reduces its cost, gravy. Valakut Awakening. Correct me if I'm wrong, this is the 3 mana card that lets you put cards in the bottom and then draw that many cards plus one?
Exactly, and it's a land on the back half.
Sweet. Which could be relevant, probably not in this case because Chaucer does have an island and an exotic orchard, and at
Mm-hmm.
least one of his opponents is playing red, so it's possible that he has access to all of his colors without playing that Valakut Awakening's land side.
Yeah.
The Yeah.
Yeah. If he doesn't, yeah, but if he doesn't draw a third land, he might drop it down tap just because he can.
So the game plan here for Chaucer is probably just to cast a turn two or turn three Vadrik and then just see where things go. Rolling Earthquake's going to potentially be really interesting here because two of his opponents are playing green, and if there are a lot of dorks, that could be a really, really powerful Rolling Earthquake, dealing one or two to all of those creatures.
Exactly. Yeah. Moving on to Beard's opening hand, he's starting with Preordain, Brainstorm. Good card draw there. Bitter Blossom and Bloodchief Ascension, and then Field of the Dead, Snow Covered Island, and Snow Covered Swamp. So this is a different hand from his last one. This one has a lot of early game potential. He can start Island Brainstorm or Island Preordain. He can go into Bitter Blossom and Bloodchief Ascension on the following turns. Those are great late game threats. If they get going, they can pressure people's life totals very well. Field of the Dead, another late game threat. We'll see how if that triggers this game, and then the rest is up to chance. But it's a pretty good card selection filled opening hand. Um,
Yeah, I guess he watched the first game and said, "Oh, well, if I'm going to be the only one interacting, I might as well be proactive with this one."
yep. What do
So a
I
lot
got
less
going on?
interaction, a little bit more cheap card draw. Bitter Blossom and Bloodchief Ascension, not so threatening the turn they come out, but could spiral into something pretty pretty obnoxious, if not deadly.
Yeah,
So we'll see how that works out.
yeah. What do I got going on here?
Well, according to the data, you have a Gemstone Caverns, a forest, a second forest, two arms, which is another twiddle, a mirror entity, Findhorn Elves, and Wandering Archaic.
Yep. To arms, another one of those twiddles that draws a card and untaps all creatures.
Perfect. So what I like about this hand is Selvalas costs 3 mana, so it's very realistic for green commanders that cost 3 mana to come out on turn two. And for the sake of speed, we really, really want to see that. So the fact that there's Forest Findhorn Elves, even Gemstone Caverns Forest Findhorn Elves on turn one is really nice. That means 4 mana on turn 2, you
Mm-hmm.
probably will still only use 3.
Yep.
But Gemstone Caverns does provide that 1 white mana. Since you're not going first, it can come in with a luck counter. Mirror Entity can do. What is Mirror Entity there for? Is it there to pump once you get infinite mana?
No, it actually has a cute combo with um, Wirewood Symbiote. Mirror Entity, you can pay 1 mana to make all your creatures have base power and toughness 1/1 and gain all creature types. That means every one of your creatures is an elf. That means your Wirewood Symbiote is an elf. Now, just like Quirion Ranger, Wirewood Symbiote's not supposed to be an elf, so you can return it to your hand as part of its own activation cost. Just like with Quirion Ranger, except this loop costs 2 mana because you have to activate Mirror Entity every time. It's still worth it in this deck because it's just so efficient. And yeah, Mirror Entity could double as an infinite mana outlet if we get to the point where I can no longer draw cards. That's another way to win the game.
Fantastic. Of course, that last
Notice,
card, Wandering Archaic, great mid-range card. Hopefully,
oh
we get
yeah,
to see that cool stuff.
notice that this hand, especially based on what I'm about to draw, plays really poorly into that rolling earthquake.
Oh, I completely forgot about that.
Yeah,
Let's see if Prince does any better against that Rolling Earthquake.
yeah, you've got a Swamp, Watery Grave, Lotus Petal, Nile Spellbomb, Priest of Titania, Reanimate, and Finale of Devastation. That's a turn one Priest of Titania, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it is. We love to see those, especially since we got our fellow green player over there probably playing more elves. That priest is going to be tapping for 2, 3 mana very quickly,
Yes, it
unless it
is.
gets Rolling Earthquake.
And you have a very strong incentive to play the Priest on turn one, even if you think there's interaction coming, because you don't have any other green mana.
Exactly. That's going to be my long-term green source. So I need to Lotus Petal, crack for green, play that priest because if I start drawing things like Garruk that cost double green, I'm not going to get there with the current cards I have in hand. Now, what I really like about this hand is that it doesn't really point you toward one game plan, but it has enough stuff here to where it promotes any other game plan that your draws will encourage. So, for example, if I draw something like Cyclonic Rift, I'm totally fine. I'll play that priest, but I'll also stall with Nihil Spellbomb, holding up Cyclonic Rift. Now I'm the control deck. I'm trying to make sure no one wins. If I draw something like an additional mana dork, then I just start stacking it with Priest of Titania and aim for that finale for X is 6 to really try and get ahead. If I draw an Entomb, obviously I have a Reanimate, so now we're a Reanimator deck. We'll go that route. So it's a really, really flexible hand that doesn't exactly tell you what it's going to do with just those first 7, which is what I really like about this deck, and this hand is a great example of that.
Yep, and with that, let's get started here.
Let's do this.
All right. I start with the Gemstone Caverns, exile my forest, because I see 3 mana on turn 2 without the second forest, so it was a pretty simple choice. Jazago's Island Pass, and here comes the Preordain from Beardumbra. Oh no! He goes for Bloodchief Ascension on turn 1. What do you think about that?
Interesting play. I guess he's trying to catch some early attacks to trigger
Mm-hmm.
that Bloodchief Ascension. He wants it to start triggering as quickly as possible. If he does go turn to Bitter Blossom, then by the third turn or fourth turn, he can start causing those life totals to drop by himself with those fairy tokens.
Yeah, exactly. Bloodchief Ascension, powerful win con if it gets going early, so he wanted to get that down as soon as possible.
For
And
sure.
notice I drew a Quirion Ranger, and I saw the opportunity to play 2/1/1s for one
Yeah,
on turn 1. Now this makes your
fantastic. Bro.
Priest of Titania look even better. There's no way you
Oh
don't
yeah.
play it.
Oh yeah. This is getting close to turn 2 Muldrotha territory if I even want to go that route.
Yeah, it is. Because that Priest taps for 3.
If you play another elf, that's the fourth mana I need.
Yep.
That Watery Grave is the sixth mana, and there's turn 2 Muldrotha. How cool is that?
And then here comes
Immediately
Rolling
lost that
Earthquake
blue.
for 1. Now, fun fact, this deals damage to each creature without horsemanship. Horsemanship, you may be like, what's that? Well, it's a mechanic they introduced in the Portal series, one of the least printed and most expensive sets. in Magic. It's the essentially an earthquake that's been shifted into portal. Um, and so it deals damage to each creature pretty much, and it's very strong sweeper in Conquest especially. So he just got rid of three. This is a good natural 3-for-1 here with rolling earthquake. Puts everybody's life total to 29 also.
And this completely changed the game because everything we had thought about our hands, now we got to start looking for that plan B as fast as possible.
And Beard reaps the rewards by waiting on the. Actually, he didn't have any worry about the rolling earthquake, but now he's in the lead because he's going to start making Bitter Blossom tokens, and we don't even have any threats in play yet. I get the Selvala down on turn 3. On turn 2. Thank you to the Gemstone Caverns.
Yeah.
And the top deck of Yavimaya, which let me play Selvala. The Gemstone Caverns has a luck counter on it, even though I didn't represent it. I don't like to put a counter on a land because I stack them in so many ways. So now you
seems fine.
Draw a Reanimate and you go for the Priest of Titania.
Well, it was in my hand. The priest wasn't the expected target. I figured it would be alive, but if we remember, I'm limited on green mana. I did draw that Overgrown Tomb.
Yeah, that
Very
was a
nice.
good top deck. You needed that.
Yeah, that I was hoping to use that Reanimate on a much juicier target, but I really need to recover from this. Otherwise, people are going to start pulling ahead of me.
Yep, and your shock on the water on that Overgrown Tomb made the Blood Chief go up to 1 counter. Now this card.
That's true.
Mind Harness. Oh, man, I was not expecting this. This is a 1 mana aura that can only hit a red or green creature and has cumulative upkeep, but it gains control of the creature. So for 1 mana on turn 3, Beard is just gonna steal my Selvala.
So what looked like a good recovery from Sakaven here is turning into a not so good recovery after all.
Oh, this is a nightmare. Because he can keep that there for as long as he wants, as long as he spends resources keeping it around, and I will not be able to win the game. I will not be able to advance my board state very well. He could have taken your priest, but I think he wanted to take Selvala away from me more, which makes sense in the long run.
Yeah.
So all I've got left to play is this mirror entity. I didn't want to do nothing.
Right.
You drew Dark Ritual. So
that's cool. What am I doing with that? Finale for 6. Let's go.
Yep. Everybody knows what you're going for. Oh, no, there's the Mystic Reflection.
So it looks like you and I both get clobbered twice here. Once by the Rolling Earthquake and once by getting Selvala stolen. And this would have been Primeval Titan is getting turned into a fairy token by Mystic Reflection.
Yep, this card's so versatile. I've been got by it so many times, and I hadn't seen it until I played Conquest. It is a fairly new card, but it can get around things that normally can't be interacted with by changing the thing that they are before they come into play. So Prince, he got a finale for 6, but now it's just going to get him a fairy token. But he still has a bit of freedom on which creature he grabs, because of course he was probably going to get a Primeval Titan, but now he might not want his Primeval Titan to enter as a copy of a fairy, so he can choose
in case I draw it or draw another tutor. Yeah.
So we'll see which creature he chooses to bring to the battlefield. I believe you get a Bane of Progress.
I do get a Bane of Progress here, and the reason is I want it to both not hurt me based on the fact that it's no longer in my deck and I don't have access to it later, but also still be useful if it ends up dying and I draw another reanimation spell.
Yeah, notice how Prince uses the card face down to represent the token. That's going to become important a little later.
And not in a positive way.
No, yeah. Beard goes ahead and uses Parlay on his first opportunity, which I disagreed with because I was like, your deck isn't prepared to let its opponents draw cards, but I don't think he cares. He's in the driver's seat right now.
That's true. That's what I was thinking, is that the card draw benefits the person who has the strongest board state, usually.
Yep. And so he's enacting that. Now he plays Boseiju, makes his spells uncounterable. That's going to be nice in a couple turns if he throws off one of those polymorphs, because he's set to go if he draws one. He's made so many creatures, even though he has none in his deck. I just play a land and pass. My hand is nothing right now. I think I might have
Yeah, we've gotten hammered.
yeah.
Now, what's interesting is we were actually not in too bad of a position after that rolling earthquake, even though it was devastating, which is a good test of how good these decks are. We kind of had to get smashed twice to sort of get down to this level. And
Yep.
even now, I don't feel like I'm completely out of it. Still doing relevant things over here, casting an Okim adversary that's hopefully going to draw me some cards, start getting me back into this game. And here's Muldrotha that I can now cast because I've been hitting those land drops.
And there's lots of elves in
Immediately
play.
casting Lotus Petal.
Yep. And we got to
Great
see
stuff.
End Step Consider from Chazzer, and a new cantrip from Midnight Hunt. Pretty good with Vadrik. Just all the cantrips are good. That's the basis of that storm strategy. Got a card filter. Now solve the equation. This is big. This could win the game because it can hit any instant or sorcery. That means it could find Gifts Ungiven. So I see that and I realize I need to get rid of Vadrik right now. So I point a path at him, and then he says unsubstantiate. That's the answer he's got. He tried to use a Force of Negation, but realized it was his own turn, so he has to use this instead. But
Right.
I've got a City of Brass, and I can just throw down the path a second time.
Probably not the greatest play from Jazzer here. I think he got tunnel visioned after he thought that the Force of Negation would work, and after realizing he didn't, he just went with the next best thing. But unsubstantiating a path that's going to come down and be recast anyway doesn't seem like the optimal play here.
Yep, and we all make those kinds of mistakes. But
For sure.
he ends up finding a Faithless Looting because he needs some draw power, and then he discards a Thought Vessel and another spell.
Yeah,
Here
fair
goes
enough.
into his turn, and he is deciding whether or not to keep the aura. So he's going to parlay first because he can use the green mana to pay for the cumulative upkeep.
If I remember correctly, he does not hit enough mana.
No, he hits only one, and so he decides to trash it. Even though he's got plenty of mana, he thinks he's taken it for long enough, so he gives me Selvala back.
Which kind of makes me worry about what he's going to do if he needs all of his mana.
Yep, me too. He might have an important 5-drop he's waiting for. So he hits the Fabled Passage, and he gets up to 5 mana. We'll see what he's got going on. Yeah,
So now
it's a bribery.
Ooh.
So this deck,
Targeting Prince.
yep, targeting Prince. Because he knows there's a Primeval Titan sitting there. Interesting that if Prince had put his Primeval Titan face down here as the token, he would not be getting briberied here. There wouldn't be many good targets, but because he left the Titan in his deck, now Beard has access to it with bribery.
That's true. Now, my deck, the different iterations of this Muldrotha Sultai midrange deck tend to have really good finishers in there. So if Primeval Titan hadn't been there, he could have still grabbed something like a Kogla and Nessa Hall, Coma, Massacre Worm, something
Silver
interesting.
Primordial. Yeah, that would have been good too. Okay, notice how Prince does not block those fairies with his own fairy. That's the relevancy we were talking about. Prince, at this point, what is going through your head?
Okay, so here's what actually happens. Is Beard Umbra attacks me with 2 fairies. I declare no blocks because I have no flying blockers, because I forget that the card I have upside down there is a fairy token. The reason I forget, in my defense, is because it's not a fairy token. It is literally that physical card. It is still Bane of Progress. So in a way, it made sense for me to just represent it with the actual card, because that's what card it is, right? If Bane of Progress dies, well, the fairy token, it goes to the graveyard as the Bane of Progress card. So
Mm-hmm.
I at the time I figured, yeah, that's fine. But I forgot, and I even mentioned after this move, I guess I could have blocked with my fairy token. Oh well, not quite realizing the gravity of the situation here. That this is the second counter on Bloodchief Ascension.
Yep, that it is. Now, going to my turn, I hit another land, and I parlay. I have Miri's Guile. It's decent. It's too long game, though. At this point, I'm feeling velocity. I need to go quick. I need to do something fast. I put down this Ley Line of Abundance. Yeah, that'll make my mirror entity better later if I can make more mana. So I go for a 2 arms, do a parlay again. See if anyone does anything about it. Nope. Okay. It draws a card on its own. I hit a Summoner's Pact. So right now, I have a mirror entity in play, I have a, um, I believe I have a Chord of Calling in my hand. So
Oh, if you if you
if
grab Symbiote, that's representing a win because of that ley line.
oh yeah, sorry, yeah, I was going for Symbiote here with that. Yep, it's representing a win, especially because Leyline guarantees 1 mana every time I tap Selvala. And
That's crazy that a turn ago you had no chance in this game, and now all of a sudden you're threatening to win.
yep, that's what this deck can do. If you give me Selvala, I will take what I need. And then Chazzer, of course, he knows he has the Force of Negation. I forget about it. He can use it on the Pact. He can't use it on a creature, so he was firing it off on the 0 mana spell because he thinks that's his only opportunity. I go ahead and tap Selvala, and I hit 4 mana off of it. That's pretty good because it allows me to cast this Wandering Archaic.
Oh yeah.
And I
Wondering
still
okay, it's gonna
have
be
2 mana after that. Um, Actually, Selvala made 5 because of Leyline, so I go for Lightning Greaves, and I put that on my Wandering Archaic. So now, if anyone casts an instant or sorcery, if they don't pay 2, I get to copy it. So I'm feeling okay. A little neutered, a little behind on combo, but ahead on board. But the Primeval Titan's still staring us down. Now,
That's
Prince
true.
here, he decides to attack, I believe, Chazzer with the Okame Adversary to draw a card. Now, he's going to put... and he texts me with Muldrotha, so he just put the 3rd counter on Bloodchief Ascension. Now he plays an Opposition Agent, which does stop the Titan from
Notice
getting
this
lands.
ordering that I play Opposition Agent and then Green Sun Zenith, so that even if Sakaven copies it with Wandering Archaic, he can't search through that Opposition Agent.
Exactly, and he gets Sylvan Safekeeper to protect the Opposition Agent and the rest of his board.
Which for me, I felt like this was a lockup of, yeah, this Primeval Titan here is completely neutered. You can't do the thing that Primeval Titan does.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm feeling pretty okay about controlling Beard Umbra at this point.
Yeah, now Chazzer untaps and slams a Curse Totem. And that's pretty
Ouch.
good in this situation. I think I argued that it wasn't good, because mostly to protect myself, as you do, but also because it is stopping Sylvan Safekeeper from protecting Opposition Agent, which is stopping the Primeval Titan.
Right. So I don't know. This is a little nuanced because everyone has a little bit of power in play now. So it's not all about this, but there is something to be said about, yeah, definitely if this agent goes down, Primeval Titan is once again the strongest card in play.
Yep, he goes for a Cyclonic Rift on Beard's Primeval Titan.
I think, like, unlike Prince last turn, this was not favorable sequencing around the Wandering Archaic.
Yeah, so I get to copy Cyclonic Rift and bounce the Curse Totem. And so Primeval Titan comes back to Prince's hand. And then he just recasts the Curse Totem using his remaining 2 mana, tapping him out. But he keeps the Curse Totem in play. Now, advantage is sort of shifted in Prince's favor.
I do like having that Primeval Titan in my hand, not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
We still have a bunch of tokens to worry about over there with Beard Umbra.
It is, and an active Field of the Dead, too. And a Bloodchief Ascension. And here's Damnation. So that's huge. Because even if I copy it with Wandering Archaic, the same result happens in that we all take a bunch of damage off of Bloodchief Ascension. We put in our notes that Prince's missed block is what allowed this 3rd counter to be on Bloodchief Ascension. So this and he's about to take a boatload of damage because Bloodchief triggers whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere.
Yeah, big oops on my part there.
Yep, and because Beard can just play a land and create a zombie, he has even more polymorph fodder. So he's feeling great right now. I untap and I just recast Selvala. It's a good use of my mana, especially since I have Lightning Greaves to protect her.
Fair enough.
And I play my Mirror's Guile, so.
Selvala gaining life is pretty relevant because I'm over here feeling the pressure of Bloodchief Ascension. I'm down at 8 life.
Mm-hmm.
Big yikes. Even cracking that Lotus Petal is going to deal me 2. That's not ideal.
Yep, you do crack the Now Spell Bomb because it's worth it to get rid of Chazzer's graveyard. You're afraid he's going to untap and win the game, I'm sure.
Right. I did that to draw a card, which is why that happened at the time that I did, but I did want Chaucer's graveyard gone
Hmm.
more than anyone else's graveyard because, storm decks, Past in Flames, all that good stuff. Defense of the Heart is a cool card.
Yep.
Unfortunately for me, no one has two creatures right now, and now they can play around it, but the alternative is doing nothing
Hmm.
and possibly still dying.
Yeah, Defense of the Heart's one
So,
of the best cards of this format, but it's
agreed.
not shining in this game.
It gives its opponent a lot of time to play around it, but the effect for the mana is incredibly powerful.
Yep. Beard just swings one fairy at you, because he needs a blocker for Vadrik. He's thinking ahead on
I
that.
think that was a zombie.
Oh, zombie, yeah, one zombie at you. He needs a blocker for Vadrik, and I guess that fairy had summoning sickness anyway. So he finally plays his commander, Geyadrone Dihada. He's gonna find a little bit of card advantage with it this game, but little do we know things are about to change this turn. I cast this Force of Vigor. Now, this is going to be the biggest stack we have this game. My targets are Blood Chief Ascension and Curse Totem, because I know we can play around the Defense of the Heart. First,
I'm
Chazzer
super happy.
responds with Impulse. He wants to find a counter because he wants to get rid of his Curse Totem. He doesn't want me to get rid of his Curse Totem.
As long as Curse Totem is there, Selvala can't win, so that's fair.
Yep, he doesn't find it,
Oh,
so Beard fires off a counterspell, and then Prince, he needs to protect his life total. So he wants the Blood Chief Ascension gone, so he hits Drown in the Lock to counterspell. But then
lock it
Beard
up.
has a Fierce Guardianship to end the stack.
No.
Yep,
And what's
Beard.
worse about this is once my Drown of the Lock hits the graveyard, I take another two, don't
Yes, you do. You're at 2 life.
I?
You can't do anything. You can't crack
If I
a Lotus
crack that
Petal.
Lotus Petal, I die, guys.
Yep. So you cast a Primeval Titan.
Pretty sweet. Now I
Yep.
can get my zombies rolling with this Field of the Dead.
Yep. It might be too little, too late though.
It just might be.
I found my Wirewood
I'm
Symbiote, by the
wait
way,
myself.
just like a little too late, which was funny.
What was?
I found my Wirewood Symbiote after everything had already died.
Ah, yeah.
Okay, so
Ooh.
this turn's going to be intense. So first, Chazzer goes with a reckless charge. It's great with Vadrik because it pays for its own flashback, thanks to Vadrik's ability.
Mostly. So it costs 2 red?
It costs 1 red to play it first, and then 1 red to flash it back. So he does
Right.
that, gives Vadrik +6 power. So now he has 10 power worth of, no, not 10, sorry, 8 power worth of Vadrik discount. So this Stroke of Genius could be X is 6 without paying a single extra colorless mana.
That is so cool.
So he actually targets, he targets himself to draw 6, but with this Drown in Dreams, he targets Beard to draw 6, and he targets Prince to mill 12. So Prince dies to the Blood Chief Ascension.
What a sad, sad way to go.
And Beard has 9 cards in hand, but the reason Chazzo did that is because he follows this up with a Jeska's Will. So he's gonna get 9 mana and 3 cards off of this. 9 colored mana is very important because his colored mana is the limiting factor here. He doesn't hit very good things off of that. He plays a talisman and then plays the Past in Flames he searched for several turns ago. And this will allow him to do everything he's done all over again. So this game will be over very quickly.
Was that even this turn that he searched for the Past in Flames? I feel like that was the last turn.
No,
The
yeah,
last game.
it was. Oh no, yeah, that might not that wasn't this game, was it?
I think he
No,
naturally drew that.
I think he did draw it. You're right. Probably with the Faithless Looting, Borrowed Hostility, another pump spell.
Even better than Reckless Charge because it only cost 1.
Yep.
Oh, wait, no, Escalate, does it return it? It doesn't, right?
No, it doesn't.
No,
Um,
never mind.
Now he plays Stormkill Artist, one of the most important cards in this deck. Gives him a treasure every time he casts or copies a spell. So now he has.
Yeah, there are a few copies of effects like this, and they are so powerful with Vadrik.
Yep, essentially all of his spells are free at this point. Now cards is his limiting factor and his life total because every time he plays a card he takes 2. So he finds a Grape Shot at 3 life. This will put him to 1 life, but this will be able to kill the Fairy token, which is Beard's only blocker.
Uh-oh.
And Vadrik is big enough to kill already.
Vadrik is huge. He's been hitting the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And now Beard Umbra is facing him with no blockers. He had strategically left up that one fairy, but that one fairy is now gone. which means the doors are wide open.
Yep, Beard dies to 12 commander damage. Um, and then I die to a flashback past in flames and a grape shot to finish me off.
Incredible.
So Chazzer comes out on top in game 2. It was a great showing because he played from behind there. Nobody expected him to just win the game on that one turn.
That really is the power of Vadrik. It was a beautiful win. He took out all three of his opponents in a different way.
Yep.
I got milled and killed by Ascension. Beard got commander damaged, Voltroned, and you got killed the traditional Storm way.
That I did. So it was a very diverse set of win conditions.
Yeah, definitely looking back on this, I would have loved to see how the game would have played out if I had not made that early mistake, getting that one extra counter on the Bloodchief Ascension. But that's how it goes sometimes.
Yep. So, thank you for joining us for the first gameplay episode. We will see you in the next. We'll be working on these more consistently in the future. Be looking for that. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys later.
Take care, everyone.